everybody. Today we're going to be talking about our newest welded yourself kit from Armageddon Armor. This is a kit for the 2014 plus 4Runner, and we're going to go over some of the parts that you're going to get in your kit right now. So I'm going to go over some of the names that we call these things so you'll know what we're talking about later. This is the face plate of the bumper. This would be the winch plate of the bumper here. You got your two side plates which key into the winch plate. You got your frame plates that mount to the frame, go figure. And then finally, we've got our SR5 versus TRD skid plate extension. This is for the guys that maybe have an SR5 bumper with no skid plate versus the guys that have a TRD off-road skid plate or TRD Pro skid plate that would interfere if this thing were to be here. We've also got our two brackets to secure the remaining plastics from the fenders, and we have our pre-cut and bent hoop for you to put on if you choose to. Not to mention some of our additional accessories like your shackle mounts, pad eyes, toe hook points. We've got a flat disc to help you guys clean your bumper up after you're done welding it. We've got some edge trim to fit on the bumper that we cut. And we've got some universal 20-inch light bar brackets, which is a new feature for this bumper that allows you to mount pretty much any 20-inch single row light bar out there on the market. So with that, let's get into cut. So step one, we're going to unroll this tube, which includes, if you can see here, it includes the template. You're going to want to cut the actual lines itself on the template, and when you do that, you'll be left with this. I hope you cut well in kindergarten, because this is quite the piece. Once you've got this cut out, we're going to go to your 4Runner here, and you see this little crease line here. Basically the first little crease that you see after the grill. We're going to line this up with the top edge of your template on that crease line all the way across here. Get some masking tape or even some scotch tape there. And we're going to want to tape this to the truck so that these two lines that you cut out so delicately fit just inside here. I started cutting on the line that we drew earlier for the template, and he is leaving a small amount. He's cutting basically towards the inside because you can always take more off. You can't put it back on after you've cut. He's also using a standard Dremel with a cutoff wheel, which, you know, some people may know that it does melt the plastic just a little bit. So obviously like a ripsaw blade would be the best possible solution for this, but those ripsaw blades are very hard to come by. We've seen a lot of folks use a lot of different things. Even like a razor blade knife can cut this plastic pretty easily. I just prefer the Dremel because it allows you to go slowly and methodically as you go across. Hopefully you've worked up the nerve to cut on your probably brand new truck, and then what you're left with is going to be this outline, obviously, of the template that we just cut out. Next thing we're going to have to do is we're going to remove the OEM aluminum crash bar because it's in the way of where the bumper will be. And then we're also going to, you can either remove or trim these as well. Ooh, looked like somebody went to town on these, cutting the crap out of them already. So anyway, one thing to remember though is you will need to remove these little tabs right here. After you've cut your bumper out, these little tabs will more than likely get in the way when you try to mount your bumper on. So Brandon with an eye is going to cut these off real quick. The next thing we're going to do is remove these frame horns, is what they call these. And there's another 4 14mm bolts on each side, 3 on the outside, 1 on the inside. Once we remove these frame horns here, we'll be able to start building the bumper. Right now Brandon is taking off the frame horns, and the OEM bolts that come on there do not need to be reused. They can be, but we have provided new 10.9, grade 10.9 bolts with the bumper so that you can have all brand new hardware. We are taking out the radiator shrouds here, which are held in by a couple of these little push pins. Well, one of the push pins, and then the other situation is this little dealio right there. And we're going to keep these for now. In some of the other instructions that you see on the SSO side of things, SSO,
SSO.
The SSO, so Southern Style Off-Road side of things, is that we just say remove these. We've not ever really found a situation or an issue with overheating with these removed, but a lot of people like to keep them on there, so we're going to do what a lot of people like. We're going to trim them and then put them back on later. So before we end up putting our side plates on the truck and getting them all squared up and everything, we want to go ahead and weld these weld nuts in. These are 3/8 by 16 weld nuts that we provided for you. You want to have them in this general location, and obviously if you're putting them on the side, you need to make sure that when you put them on your frame plates, both of these frame plates are identical, right, from side to side. The only thing that makes any difference between them is what side you put these weld nuts on. So if you end up putting these weld nuts on the same side, you're going to have two frame plates that are identical but not going to work out. So you need to make sure that these weld nuts, whatever one you decide you're going to put on the driver versus passenger side, you need to make sure that these weld nuts are welded to the inside of that side plate, not the outside. It won't work that way. So we're going to put these weld nuts in, and one little tip that I'd like to show people is that when you're putting these weld nuts in, you want these all in the horizontal fashion, so to give you as much clearance as possible, because we do have a winch tray that's going to go right here. So make sure that they're horizontal with the plate, and when you go to either tack or weld one side in, I find it beneficial to hold the other side down with or right in the middle actually, with a piece of wood or something like that, so that when you put this first tack, it doesn't lift that weld nut up without you knowing about it, and you end up welding the whole thing in, and then you're left with a weld nut that's cockeyed and you can't get your bolts in right. So be sure to go ahead and just press these down right in the middle so that you can guarantee that you don't have any issues later. Alright guys, so the first thing we're going to do when we start this build is we're going to install these frame plates loosely using just two bolts on the frame horns, and just kind of get that snugged up by hand so that we'll have some wiggle room when we're putting all the other pieces together. So what we're going to do first, we're going to put our side plates on, and of course you want the weld nuts towards the inside of the bumper, and this keyway slots right into the frame plate. Can you hand me the once you got that in there, you want to tighten this up. But you want to leave it just a little loose. So that we still have some wiggle room to be able to get our winch tray in. Alright, so now we're putting this side plate in, and we're using the
17mm.
Also, another issue that you're probably going to find is that if you never put anything in these bolt holes here, it's probably going to be filled with dirt and grime and grit, and it's not going to easily thread in. So you're going to have to run it through once at least to be able to make sure that you can hand tighten this thing down and get it situated right where you need it. Now, when you tighten this up, it's going to force itself to be exactly straight with the frame of your vehicle. We just need to make sure that it's pushed up as far as we can on this frame plate. And with that put in place, we'll be able to tighten these down. So one thing you're going to want to make certain to pay attention to is this gap right here. You want this to be as even as possible. If you're seeing that it's got a, obviously you can, there's a lot of adjustment here, but if you're seeing that it's pointed down a little bit, that's no good, because then your bumper is going to be facing towards the ground. So you want to make sure that this is as close and as tight together as possible, just like that, and that way you know that it's all going to be square after the fact. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our winch tray here, and you're going to notice it's got a 90-degree bend on it right here. This 90-degree bend faces down. So be certain to put your winch tray in this way. And you can see it's also got these tab keyways that slide in there just like this. And on the other side, they slide in there like that. And at this point, it's going to be helpful if you've got a floor jack or even the bottle jack from your own 4Runner or something like that. Grab a 2x4 or something like that and give it some upward thrust so that it holds everything nice and aligned while you tighten up all your bolts, because this is going to be your main structure for when your face gets welded onto the bumper. So now that we've got everything in place and we've got all of our bolts tight at this point, including this one down here, you should see that everything lines up nicely, that we've got good, even, consistent gaps all the way around, and you're now ready to tack it in place and begin welding it up. So now we're ready to tack this thing into place. And before you do this, some people like to disconnect their battery just for safety's sake. But it's real simple to do this. All we got to do is we're going to hit it in here, 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 and then another one underneath down here. In fact, you can pretty much run a small little bead on this winch tray to the side plate and then tie in the frame plate as well, right all in this section. Now when you're doing this tack here, you'll see that this is completely flush, and we want that to stay that way because the face is going to come right down here. So when you're making your tack, be certain to keep it back a little bit from that edge. Whoop, that wasn't a good one. Miss! And then you get somebody that can weld to do it.